1914, Jehovah's Witnesses proudly proclaim Jesus coming into his kingdom. 1914, Jesus came into his kingdom authority, and just a few years later he appointed the faithful and discreet slave over all his earthly belongings. The Watchtower states that Jesus is only directing people by means of the faithful and discreet slave, which is represented by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now here is a picture of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. These are the only ones on earth that Jesus is directing through. Now this faithful slave or governing body is also known as the channel of communication, and the greatly diversified wisdom of God can become known only through Jehovah's channel of communication, the faithful and discreet slave. The Watchtower teaches us, unless we are in touch with this channel of communication that God is using, we will not progress along the road to life, no matter how much Bible reading we do. In fact, for one to receive Holy Spirit, he must also be in touch with God's channel of communication. So, Jesus came into kingdom authority in 1914. Then he appointed the faithful and discreet slave, and remember, this faithful and discreet slave is represented by the governing body. Now, this faithful and discreet slave or governing body is also the channel of communication. And remember, we will never progress along the road to life or receive Holy Spirit unless we go through this channel of communication. Who is the faithful and discreet slave represented by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. It is important to fully understand how this faithful and discreet slave was appointed over all Jesus' belongings. Now, the Watchtower states that all of this took place just as it was foretold. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Okay, now we are going to list out these events that the Watchtower claims already have occurred so that we can fully understand and get the big picture. This one we will abbreviate sun, moon, stars, and heaven. Watchtower says that evidence is piling up about the fact that in the year 1914, the sign of the Son of Man appeared in heaven. Also, they claim that in 1914, they saw the sign of Christ coming on the clouds of heaven. Next, we are going to look at what the Watchtower claims happened just a few years later in 1919. Jesus sent forth his angels to gather chosen ones from all parts of the earth. Okay, so these are all clearly biblical teachings. If we look at Matthew 24, verse 29, we will see that Jesus did say all these things. He did say that the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And don't worry, he also said that the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. He also said that they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. And besides that, he said, he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet sound, and they will gather his chosen ones. So all these things happened as the Watchtower said in 1914 to 1919. It's clearly in the Bible. But the problem is, in the Bible, it says that all these things happened immediately after the tribulation. So how does the Watchtower explain this? Well, in 1925, the Watchtower said that in 1914, that the tribulation had begun and that it was not allowed to run its full course then, but God stopped World War I in 1918, and from then on, God was allowing an interval for the activity of his anointed remnant of elect Christians before he let the final part of the Great Tribulation resume at the Battle of Armageddon and come to its termination. But people weren't buying this story because it didn't make any sense. So they had to admit the Great Tribulation hadn't started yet. But they are still claiming that all the events that will happen after the tribulation still happened. Why would they do this? Why would they say this when the Bible clearly teaches all those events happen after the tribulation? It's just foolish. So what would make them want to teach their members lies? I can tell you why. If all those events didn't happen, if 1914 didn't happen, then that means the governing body and the faithful and discreet slave didn't happen. If the governing body isn't really God's channel with earth, then that means it's all been a big lie. It's all a big sham. And it turns out that people have been lied to by the Watchtower for over 100 years now.